Hello and welcome to another episode of What Gets Captured on Film. I am your host, Dylan Paulson, and if you're new here, this is a show all about movies and movie news. So each week we'll look at the biggest headlines from the past week and I'll talk about it. Give you my opinion and talk about any things that I've been watching within the past week. Try to keep it as relevant and topical as ever. So welcome to episode 13, I believe, if my document is correct. And this week we'll be looking at all things from December 22nd through December 28th. So before we get right into it, just another announcement that if you have anything you want to talk about, ask me about, tell me that I'm wrong, spark some sort of discussion over on the show, you can write to my email, whatgetscaptured@gmail.com, and I'll read your inquiry on the show, and we can have some sort of discussion. So now, let's get right into some things, some smaller news items that don't deserve a story, but some things I still want to talk about. And first things first, let's talk about the past weekend in the box office. I'm sure most people have seen the headlines. It's been going around on Twitter and everything, but Spider-Man No Way Home, number one, still, for its second week. This past weekend, this is all domestic, right? I think I forget to say that sometimes. So whenever I talk about box office grosses, it's all domestic. And it's not necessarily profit, although there's much profit to be had with these movies. So Spider-Man No Way Home, number one, $84.5 million in its second week. Makes for $470 million domestic only. And I don't know if I put it in the news or in the show somewhere else that I'll talk about later, but the movie did surpass $1 billion, which is crazy. And it might be the quickest movie to ever reach $1 billion too. I could be wrong about that. I'm just pulling that out the back of my head, but yeah, that could be true too. But who knows? Okay, number two, Sing 2 with $22 million makes for just under $40 million in its total gross. Next is The Matrix Resurrections with $12 million, makes about $22.5 million total. Number 4, The King's Man with $6 million, just under $10 million total, which is a shame for that movie. It looked pretty good. And then number 5 is American Underdog, $5.9 million. American Underdog, NFL MVP. Oh yeah, that was an interesting story. That wasn't. I was looking into a movie on the show. We talked about, there was a trailer that I watched. It had J.K. Simmons in it, and it was about should college athletes be paid. It wasn't called American Underdog. It was called something else, National Champions maybe. But that's not that movie. Okay. And then number 6, $2.8 million, West Side Story, for a total domestic gross of just about $24 million, which is a flop for that movie. That is such a shame, but we'll see come award season. I'm sure that West Side Story will be nominated for something. It's Steven Spielberg. It's just the nature of who he is. He'll be nominated for something, and that movie will get some sort of other marketing push around award season. So that movie will definitely have the time to live again. So, okay, let's talk about this first small piece of news. Hollywood Reporter released an interview with Tom Holland talking about the making of Marvel films and whether or not they are art, and how Spider-Man No Way Home should be considered for a Best Picture nominee. I have here a quote from Tom Holland, and I think this will spark some sort of conversation with me, because I have some things I definitely want to talk about. But this is a quote from Tom Holland. Quote, "You can ask Martin Scorsese, would you want to make a Marvel movie? But he doesn't know what it's like because he's never made one. Ellipsis. I've made Marvel movies, and I've also made movies that have been in the conversation in the world of the Oscars. And the only difference, really, is one is much more expensive than the other. But the way I break down the character, the way the director etches out the arc of the story and characters, it's all the same, just done on a different scale. So I do think they're real art. When you're making these films, that good or bad, millions of people will see them. Whereas when you're making a small indie film, if it's not very good, no one will watch it. So it comes with different levels of pressure. I mean, you can also ask Benedict Cumberbatch or Robert Downey Jr. or Scarlett Johansson, people who have all made the kinds of movies that are, quote, Oscar-worthy. and also made superhero movies, and they will tell you that they're the same, just on a different scale, and there's less spandex in Oscar movies, end quote. So I think with Tom Holland, I think he's wrong, first and foremost. I don't think that they're the same movie on a different scale. I highly disagree, especially when it comes to Spider-Man No Way Home. I thought that movie, character-wise, beat by beat, I thought it was uninspired, and I thought it was unoriginal and lazy and pulled emotional cores lazily. If you felt emotional toward that movie, fine. If you liked that movie, fine. I liked it. I did. I promise you I did like it. But the reason I criticize the movie, and the reason why I criticize a lot of movies, especially on the show, is that Oscar movies, whatever. There are always movies that miss the Oscars, that are, the biggest, the biggest, misses of the Oscars this year, movies that should have been nominated for X, Y, Z, whatever. But the Oscars is usually, almost always, every year, a good amalgamation of the higher echelon of movie making in a year. And although Spider-Man No Way Home deserves some sort of award for being the only movie in 2021 to surpass $1 billion worldwide in gross revenue, and I think that award is the $1 billion that it has in gross revenue, I don't think it deserves to be at the Oscars at all, because it really just wasn't that good from a technical point of view when you look at the writing. And no Best Picture winner. Well, I don't want to say that, because there's been some definitely some misses over the years, but no, a Best Picture winner should not have a faulty script. A Best Picture winner shouldn't have, people walk out of it and question whether or not it was, that it was warranted, or question, it's just not, the movie's lazy is the end goal of what I want to say here. Spider-Man No Way Home is a lazy movie, but there are definitely good things about it. When I think I said this at the end of the last episode, or when I'm talking about Spider-Man, is that if I can turn off my brain and just not think about the writing, and not think about the directing and the character development and the motivations, and character defining moments, and if they're lazy or not. If I can turn that part of my brain off and just watch the movie, it's a great movie. I'll love it. I'll say, yeah, it's an Oscar winner. Put that a Best Picture Oscar winner or whatever the fuck. But I can't turn that part of my brain off. And especially since I started doing that show, I'm completely unable to turn this part of my brain off. Because every time I go into a movie, I'm thinking, how am I going to talk about it? And throughout the movie, I'm thinking, how am I going to talk about it? How am I going to talk about it? And if anything jumps out to me, even a little bit, I'm going to talk about it on the show. I don't take notes during movies. I take notes immediately after I take movies, if it's necessary. Spider-Man, I usually will watch whatever movie is going to be the topic of that show. I'm going to watch it the night before if I'm able. I did that with Spider-Man. I watched it Monday night, and then I recorded on Tuesday. Didn't take any notes. Anything that you heard in that episode was off the cuff. I did take notes for a movie this week because I watched it, 5 days ago, and I wanted to, so I wrote down notes, but I wrote down notes afterwards. I think that's kind of a non sequitur of what I think about Spider-Man, but just giving you some background, I guess. But yes, but I don't think Spider-Man No Way Home is deserving of any Oscar centered around writing, period. Yeah, I think that's a good statement. I think that's a good statement from me. But so when Tom Holland, in his quote here, he says, blah, 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 blah. So I don't think, okay, when you're making these films, you know that good or bad, millions of people will see them. Whereas when you're making a small indie film, if it's not very good, no one will watch it. So it comes with different levels of pressure. I think that's kind of speaks volumes in that quote, that there is a different kind of pressure to these small indie films because they have to be good. So when you're making movies he's making a movie, right? He's making Spider-Man. Or Uncharted even. He's making this movie and he knows millions of people are going to see it, right? So even from the actor's perspective, like you want as an actor, almost all actors have this drive to give the best performance they can with any character they're given, to give that performance. But not everyone on set has that. Not every, writer. And I just know, like, I don't know this factually for sure, but I can feel it that the script of No Way Home was expedited. It was rushed. I just can feel it with this. There's a pivotal moment in the second half of the movie. I think it would be, I would have to think about the movie more, maybe watch it again, but I think it would be the like midpoint crisis realization for the main character. That moment is incredibly lazy. And I know that if they were given more time, they could do it. They could write something that is creative and different and unique. And I would be like, yeah, you know what? Spider-Man does deserve a Best Picture nominee or a Best Writing nominee, but it doesn't because it's lazy. And that's really, at the end of the day, what I think about the movie. I think it's lazy writing. I think the writing is lazy. There are a lot of other things, other technical aspects of the movie that are great. Production design, maybe costumes. I don't know. It's so hard to tell in these movies if the costumes are any good because they're all CG. Anytime a character walks around in a costume, it's CG. I mean, think back to like superhero movies of the 2000s. We'll take Spider-Man 1, Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man 3, for example, even the early X-Men movies. If the character fully wasn't CG rendered, they are there in their costume on screen. And I know that they film the Marvel movies like that because I've seen press images of Tom Holland in the suit. But anytime Tom Holland is in the suit in the final cut of the movie, it's completely all CG and it looks like shit. You can tell. I mean, you can just tell because it just looks off. There were so many parts in Spider-Man No Way Home when I was like, man, that CG looks off. And, people would say, just as a devil's advocate point to this, The Irishman had some pretty horrible CG in it as well. I totally agree. The Irishman did have horrible CG in it. And it did, even in that movie, take me out and be like, wow, that's horrible. I really wish that they had done that better, used a body double for that or whatever it is. But the CG doesn't make that movie. Sure, it takes me out of a scene. Sure, it does. Absolutely. But the movie as a whole, the whole maybe is... the movie lives and dies by the writing. If the writing's not good, if the script isn't good, but when you start filming, the movie's not going to get any better. And The Irishman had a killer script. So when you have things along the way, like maybe this costume doesn't look right, maybe this CG doesn't look right, maybe this scene was filmed a little funky, the pacing is off of this scene, or the lighting composition is odd in the shot, or whatever. I don't know. I'm just pulling things out of the air. I don't know if this is actually true about The Irishman. I didn't study lighting, but in No Way Home, the script just isn't that good. So when you get to the things that you know are good about the movie, it makes it hard to like, because the movie itself started from such a rocky, lazy place. And I didn't really... I wanted to put this article from the Hollywood Reporter at the top of the show, but I didn't really mean to turn it into a whole thing about ranting about how bad Spider-Man is, because it's not, right? It just has a bad script, and it just doesn't deserve to be at the Oscars, is my opinion. We'll see when the Oscar nominees come out. I am very, very curious to see if this is going to be at the top. we'll see. This kind of leads me into my next thing. So let's go into the next thing right now. Is that Hollywood Reporter's Scott Feinberg released a list of his potential films that will make the Oscars in all categories. This is usually ridiculous, as I noted like a few episodes ago that I just will not read these lists. They usually curate them or start curating them around November, before all the movies even come out, or any of the indie movies get big pushes or anything. Like Licorice Pizza wasn't even on any lists or anything. But I think that now, since all movies that are probably going to be considered have been released and critics have seen them, I think it's warranted to bring up one of these lists and talk about it. So this is the Hollywood Reporter. This is Scott Feinberg. I look at Hollywood Reporter's predictions every year about this time. So I'm not going to go through every category, but I want to read the Best Picture nominees. He has them into 3 categories, and he does this with every category of award: Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor. He goes through every single one and puts them into 3 categories like this. He has frontrunners, possibilities, and long shots. So these are the frontrunners for Best Picture from the Hollywood Reporter Scott Feinberg: Belfast, The Power of the Dog, West Side Story, King Richard, Licorice Pizza, Tick, Tick, Boom, Dune, Coda, Don't Look Up, Spider-Man No Way Home. Possibilities: The Lost Daughter, Being the Ricardos, Come On, Come On, A Hero, Summer of Soul, Nightmare Alley, House of Gucci, The Tragedy of Macbeth, Drive My Car. I think Drive My Car is definitely going to be there. Long shots: The Hand of God, Flea, Serrano, Red Rocket, Parallel Mothers, The Harder They Fall, The Last Duel, Spencer. I think Red Rocket has a pretty good chance of being in the top. And what else? What else did I just say? Oh, Drive My Car. I think Drive My Car is definitely going to be nominated. And I don't know. I don't know for sure because I haven't seen these movies, right? But when you look at the news as much as I do, you just see all these op-eds from all these different, you just see how critics talk about certain movies. And critics are just one category of people that vote for the nominees. And they write these op-ed pieces to try to promote the things that they want to see get the awards. So, but yeah, let's go back to these front runners. Scott Feinberg puts Spider-Man on this front runner list. And I disagree. I just really highly disagree. And it's a shame because the movie is getting really good reviews and it deserves them. It deserves good reviews. I don't think it deserves, I don't want to talk about scores like every movie deserves some sort of X number or something, every movie deserves an 8 or whatever, but because that's not true. And I don't necessarily believe in numbers, but I certainly will look at a review score to tell me whether or not I should see a movie. And, I'll look up the Metacritic score for Spider-Man No Way Home right now, and I'll tell you if I think it's too high or too low. Because I definitely looked at it before I went to see the movie, and I watched the movie, and I thought it was too high. Because I was like, man, I was sorry, that's the video game, Marvel's Spider-Man. Spider-Man No Way Home, 71. I actually totally agree with that Metascore. Spider-Man No Way Home, 71. Totally agree with that. That's totally fine. I thought it was going to be higher. Yeah, totally agree. The audience score is high, 8.8. That's high. I think that's too high. Metascore 71, totally fine. Totally fine by me. Because that's kind of, what I think about it. I think it's good, but I don't think it's great. I don't really think it's in this upper echelon of movies. And just for comparison of another movie that I watched this year and talked about extensively on the show, I'm going to look up Tick, Tick, Boom on Metacritic. 74 on Metacritic and 76 user score. I think, I don't know, maybe that could be a little low. I don't know. See, that was another thing that I don't know. Maybe that's kind of accurate. The more I'm thinking about it, the more I'm like, man, that was actually not that great, because there were some directorial things. I remember the scene in New York that was completely CG that kind of annoyed me. It was like this whole big song that was annoying. I think that it wasn't really adapted well for the screen, which is all the writing. So yeah, actually maybe 74 is fine. Maybe even that's a little high, which is crazy. I don't think that movie deserves to be a Best Picture frontrunner, but Andrew Garfield definitely deserves a nod for that, I think. And if he got one, if Andrew Garfield got an Oscar nominee for that, I would not be upset. I don't know if he deserves one, but if he got one, I wouldn't be upset. And then just for comparison, I think this is the highest rated movie of the year. Maybe not, but I want to look up Licorice Pizza. 90 on Metascore. And that's from like 40 critics. So it's high. I mean, that's really high. And then just for another comparison's sake, my favorite movie, Boyhood, 100 on Metascore from 50 critics. So there you go. It's my favorite movie of all time. It's Boyhood. I love bringing that up. That's why I look at Metascores, because I can kind of relate to it if that's the bar. If the bar for a 100 is Boyhood, I can relate to that. Okay, so to be honest, I don't want to beat a dead horse here, and I don't want to overly shit on Spider-Man, because I know a lot of people liked it. And to be honest, I swear that I liked the movie. I walked out and I was very happy I spent the money to go see it. I truly, truly am. But I don't think it deserves to be an Oscar movie. And, okay, so this is what I'll say to wrap up this whole Marvel movie, superhero movie, Oscar movies are whatever. Are superhero movies art? Absolutely. Absolutely. But are they the best representation of the medium of film? I don't think so. And when I think back on the better Marvel movies, I think Avengers Endgame was way better than Spider-Man No Way Home. I think it was way, way, way better. Do I think that deserved an Oscar nominee? To be honest, I don't know, because I only watched it one time. But I remember loving it, and I remember not really having much negative to say about it. But like I said, I watch movies a little differently now since I started the show. So it might be worth it for me to go back and watch a few of the older Marvel movies, like Civil War, Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame, and just to see if I think that maybe they were snubbed. And I know that in this article, the Hollywood Reporter article, Black Panther, they mentioned Black Panther was nominated for Best Picture. I don't know if I would go so far as to say that movie deserved a Best Picture nominee, but it definitely deserved something. I mean, the movie was great. And I think that Black Panther, it probably is, cultural importance aside, I think that movie is remarkably good and is one of the standout movies that you can watch. I watch it. It was actually my first Marvel movie other than Iron Man 1. That was my first Marvel movie. I had seen it. I watched it for a film class in college. I had completely written off Marvel movies and said, fuck this, I'm not watching. And I watched it and I was amazed. I was like, this is incredible. And it really is. It really is really, really, really good. So does that movie deserve, rhetorical question, does that movie deserve to be nominated for Best Picture? Maybe it does. I don't know. But if I were a critic that year, I don't know if I would nominate it. But I also understand the cultural significance of the film. And maybe for that alone, not for that alone, maybe for that and for the movie being as good as it was, it did deserve a nominee. But I'm not upset with it being a nominee by any means. I think it's great. I think that Black Panther is remarkably good, as I said. Okay, but I think I've exhausted this topic. If you disagree or if you want to hear more, please write into the show. What gets captured at gmail.com. So now let's talk about what I've been watching this week. So I started this episode and I was like writing the document for everything, and I was thinking, I'm not going to really have that much to talk about. The news is pretty light, but there's just a lot to talk about, even though there's not a lot of news because of Christmas. Oh yeah. I hope everyone had a good Christmas. And this is the show that will go live right before New Year's. I hope everyone has a great New Year. But yeah, so what I've been watching this week, I watched Being the Ricardos and I watched Don't Look Up. I'm going to talk about Being the Ricardos first because I watched it a little while ago. I wrote down some notes here. I'm going to briefly breeze through them. Maybe some, they'll jog my memory on certain things. But so this is a movie that I'm gonna look up the Metascore for this one too, just to like make a point, because both of these movies, Being the Ricardos and Don't Look Up, I thought that their Metascore was way too low. Yeah, so Being the Ricardos Metascore of 60. That's low for this movie. Definitely low. I don't agree with that. So, just to say that I don't, the Metascore doesn't mean everything to me. I don't always side with the critics. There's more nuance to me, right? So, yeah. So Being the Ricardos, I thought it was great. I really didn't, walk out of the movie because I saw it on Amazon Prime, but turned off the movie and loved it. Really did. I love seeing that world. Television is such an interesting and fast-paced environment. It's so, especially from that era, it's just so interesting and unique of an environment to explore. And Sorkin did a good job with it. Alia Shawkat was great. She was like the standout side character. Aside from Lucy and Desi, she was probably my favorite character. She was great. Alia Shawkat was great. Tony Hale did a great job too. Both of them Arrested Development alumni. The writing was good. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, yeah, okay. So the writing was really good. Overall, I think. It had some faults, and I'll talk about them in a sec. But I want to say that there was a scene toward the end of the movie where, I don't know if this is a spoiler or not. I'll try and talk around it so I don't spoil anything. But, this movie is historical. So there's, so when the whole movie is about Lucille Ball, and she has some sort of emotional task to overcome. And when she is, spoilers, I guess, redeemed in the eyes of the audience, when that redemption scene comes toward the end of the movie, it is incredibly emotional. And I was welling up. No doubt, very emotional. And that was great. So that was done very well. The lead up to that was done very well. I didn't know what was going to happen. Truly did not expect any outcome one way or the other. But the outcome that we got made me very emotional. And it was very well done all around with the acting and the I'm sure there was some sort of music cue there. And it was just very well done. Definitely. There were a few things that I disliked. The timeline of the movie jumps around a lot from, quote unquote present day, where Lucy and Desi are making the show together, and in like a previous era where Lucy is trying to get the show off the ground, but she's still married to Desi, and she's, trying to get Desi involved with the show, trying to, convince, whoever, the movie studio or the television producers that Desi can be in the show and whatever. The timeline jumping around was incredibly confusing. I totally understand why those scenes of the past, right, of making the show were important. I totally get it. You need to establish that Lucy fights for Desi, because otherwise the scenes that come later don't matter as much. They don't hold as much weight to them. But so though you need to establish that Lucy will fight for Desi. And so those scenes are definitely warranted. You can't just cut them out. But the jumping from timeline to timeline from present day to 5 years ago or whatever was confusing. And I think that there definitely should have been a more definitive, okay, we're in this time period now, we're in this time period now, because just based on the context clues of the dialogue just wasn't entirely enough it just wasn't enough for me to be like, okay, we're here or here. It's just like, wait, are we here or are we there? Or because it's not like it goes scene to scene, goes back and forth. It's like you'll have 20 minutes of this and then 5 minutes of this, and then 40 minutes of this and then 5 minutes of this. And so it's like it's inconsistent with when it jumps back and forth, so you're always kind of guessing, where are we right now? So that was probably the biggest flaw of the movie, was being confused on where we were in the timeline. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, yeah, in the beginning of the movie, I thought the audio mixing was kind of off, and because it probably wasn't mastered for streaming, which is another issue. I think it was mastered for theaters, so just the sound mixing, the sound design was engineered just a little differently so that the sound comes at the audience a little differently than streaming at home on your computer, on your phone. I watch it on my TV. So that, was odd. I don't know. I don't really know what more to say about that. There were just a few sound things I was like, I need to go back and turn on subtitles for like 5 minutes and be like, wait, what? I don't know what anyone is really saying right now. Yeah. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, yeah. Another thing was that Aaron Sorkin seemed in his writing to be a little weary of the time period. And it wasn't quippy enough. The writing wasn't Sorkin enough. And I think that's why I was so interested in Alia Shawkat's character as a writer. The writer's room is the best. It's Alia Shawkat, Tony Hale, and then that guy who plays who's the new character. He's like the new guy. He's like new Jim in like the last season of The Office. He's great. So it's the three of them. Their comedic banter is amazing. The writing between them, the dialogue is great. Really, that is like Sorkin, very specific. But outside of that writing room, there's really not that much. If a line here or there that Lucy says that's like, wow, that's definitely Sorkin. But he seemed a little weary of the material. It seemed like I don't know, maybe he was trying to follow up Trial of the Chicago 7 a little too quickly. Maybe this was rushed. Maybe he didn't. I don't know. It seemed a little odd. It seemed like he was trying to do more things with his directing than he was doing with his writing. And when it really comes down to it, Sorkin is a writer first. And he's not even a screenwriter first. He's a playwright first. He's an incredible, craftsman of dialogue. And to be able to create dialogue is great. But to be able to put dialogue in a movie with visual aspects is something different. And he has perfected screenwriting, has perfected putting his playwright talent into screenplays. But it seems like this is a little bit of a step back writing wise. I do think that, unfortunately, is the case. But again, like I said, I love the movie overall, and I got emotional in it. So, maybe through each of these, intricate little things that I didn't think were as good as they could have been, ultimately at the end of the movie, I wound up getting emotional, and that's what I love about movies. We sit down for 2 hours, we get invested into characters, into a place that we didn't know prior to that 2 hours, and by the end of the movie, we get emotional and we're invested. And when that movie ends, we feel as though we feel a little lost, right? I love that. I love that feeling. Great escapism. Love movies. Really, that is why I love movies. That's why I love movies. That's why I keep watching movies. That's why I talk about movies. That's why I started this podcast. Truly is. So being the Ricardos was great example of that. And the next movie that I want to talk about, Don't Look Up. Now, the biggest thing about this movie, and I watched this last night, I think, maybe on Sunday. Yeah, I watched it on Sunday. And today's Tuesday. I record on Tuesdays. The biggest problem with this movie truly is the first 10, 15 minutes. The pacing, the tone is so all over the place, bonkers wrong. It just has no idea what it wants to be in the first 10, 15, 20 minutes. And it almost turned me off. I was about to turn it off. I was so turned off of the movie. I was like, wow, I can't believe this. And I don't really know what that's attributed to. Maybe the writing, probably the directing, because a lot of things were post. A lot of these problems could be ameliorated in editing, in post-production. That's kind of the joke of production. You always say, oh, we'll fix it in post. But a lot of these things, pacing, it can definitely be fixed in post if you have enough screen time there. So I think it was kind of a directing problem over the writing problem. But that being said, once the movie gets going and it does find its tone, once all the characters are properly introduced and you understand the world that is being established, which is kind of just like our world, but turned up just a notch, just turned up one extra little notch, the movie really takes off. It is really funny. It is really dire. It is really dark. Everyone does a great job. No performance was missed. And really after that 20 minutes, the writing is really good. It's really unique, and it's really, this is comedy done right. This is how you do comedy. It's just really great. And the performances are great. I didn't really have a problem with the directing after that, but it was really just because, the movie doesn't really do anything to set itself apart as, in terms of its style, right? It doesn't have that Adam McKay flair after the first 10 minutes. And I think the 10 minutes are the weakest part of the movie. If they kept that flair going throughout, like they did with The Big Short, then I think you would have had a different movie. And I think you would have maybe had a little bit of a better movie. But I don't know. That's a question for another day, because I think that not having a tone could possibly, not having any sort of, high style, directing techniques could actually make this movie as good as it is. So I think, yeah, okay. So that's it. First 10, 15 minutes, if you can get through that movie or get through that part of the movie, you'll love it. Seriously. Promise you. Okay, after that, so the bigger conversation with this movie kind of resides around the theme of the movie, the message. There is a very clear, obvious message that climate change is happening now, and we need to make a change now, right? That is kind of the message. It's also kind of anti-political, anti-Donald Trump, anti-modern conservatism. That's kind of the theme, right? And there's a lot to talk about there. And I don't necessarily want to make this a political discussion, because I don't think that my politics or any viewers' politics should have a bearing on what they think of the movie. Because I don't think that's relevant in the conversation of the quality of this film. But I should say that I question whether or not this movie was warranted, whether or not it needed to be made. And here's why I say that. I'm not, just to give you a glimpse into my politics, climate change is real. I am not a science denier. I do what I can, right, to limit my carbon emissions, to limit my negative effect on the world. But I am also someone who believes that it is impossible to live a completely moral, positive life. that, and there are so many, there's so many places you put your money. There's so many places you get money from that wound up having some sort of negative effect on the environment. And it's so impossible to escape all of that, so I just in my own life, just do what I can. But there's only so much research that can be done in a day from, where I buy my canned beans from, right? Where I go grocery shopping. Like, I can't do research on so it's impossible, right? Okay. That aside, that's my politics, okay? There you go. That's my politics. So this movie, I question whether or not it was warranted because the film industry and people who are going to watch this movie kind of already have their opinion. And that's just kind of the nature of the beast of politics, and especially politics today, is that everyone has their opinion now. There really is no changing anyone's mind, right? If COVID can't do it with killing hundreds of thousands of people, then no one's mind is going to get changed, right? It's not going to happen. So I think that this movie was just a bunch of people in Hollywood got together and thought that they needed to do something in order to feel good about themselves at night and feel like, wow, you know what? I did something, I made this movie that says something. And I think that the movie is saying something quite important, but I don't think that it is really going to change anyone's mind just because of the nature of the beast, right? And so I, just from that perspective, question whether or not the movie was warranted in its creation. Now, someone could say maybe that we should try, right? Even if these people even if anyone that, denies science or doesn't recycle or whatever, denies climate change, even if they are stuck in their ways, it's worth it to try, right? And maybe that is the point of the movie. Maybe that was actually my biggest complaint. But maybe I just talked myself through it. So that was a nice little conversation to have, wasn't it? What else did I want to talk about this movie? So yeah, that was kind of it. It's really good. Again, I think the Metascore is too low, but I will say first 10, 15 minutes are bad, like really bad. Like, I was going to turn it off bad. You might not think that. I have a really low tolerance for bad intros to movies, but I will try my darndest to sit through them just so I can, get to what's good there. And yeah, I think Leonardo DiCaprio's performance is incredible. Scarlett Johansson does a great job. Everyone does a good job. Everyone does a good job. Especially, I think, Timothée Chalamet. Even though he has a really small part in the film, I think he kills it. Like, great like, so funny. And I forget the name of the actor. I'm going to look it up right now. But the guy that is the Bash CEO, I'm going to look up who it is. Mark Rylance. So funny. He was the funniest part of the movie. Like, great. And his dialogue was great too. And his candor, just the way he talks, is so funny. Everything he says is funny. It's great. And it seriously is. And I implore everyone to watch it. You're going to need something light afterwards if you tend to get wrapped up in the plot of whatever you're watching. It's a dire movie, no doubt, but it is funny. And I think that once you get into the movie right after that first 10 minutes, I think it's paced incredibly well. I think the tone is incredibly well managed. Really, I mean, Adam McKay did a good job. It just seemed off in the first, in that first little bit. But that was another thing. I'm going to look up the Metascore for that too, for Don't Look Up, just so I can tell you exactly how low it is. Oh, I can't find it. Oh, 50, based on 46 critics. And the user score is a 6. I think they're both low. Yeah, I don't know. I think they're both low. So while the movie is saying something important, and while I do still kind of question whether or not its creation is warranted, I think it's a really good movie, right? If you walk out of this movie, and even though you're laughing the whole time because it's hilarious, and you walk out and you feel dire and you feel grim, that's kind of the point, right? Because climate change is a thing, and it's happening now, right? So that's the movie wants you to take action. Its desire is saying, take action, because this is what's going to happen. And I think that is, that's the point, right? That's the point of a film. That's the point of any film, of being the Ricardos even. That wasn't a perfect movie, but by the end, I was welling up. If by the end of Don't Look Up, even if it's not a perfect movie, despite those, little hiccups in the pacing, if by the end I was like, shit, man, I am depressed about the world. That's kind of the point of the film, right? And it's fine that a movie can get criticism for, maybe you don't want to watch a movie that makes you depressed. But that was the point of the movie. It succeeded in what it was trying to do. So I'm only going to applaud it for that and to give it praise for that. So that's all I really want to say about that. I mean, yeah, that's all. Yep. I'm content with that conversation. All right. That's what I've been watching this week. Still getting through Seinfeld and Ozark. I'll get through them eventually, I promise. Just really wrapped up in some movies and some video games right now I want to play. But we have a few things to get through in the news. Really, really slow news week this week because of Christmas, but definitely some things I want to talk about that are important. And this is going to be a long episode, I can already tell. So let's just get into it. Let's get into the news. Number 1, Sony Pictures released a new trailer this week for upcoming action thriller Uncharted. The film, which is based off the Sony PlayStation exclusive video games from 2007 through 2017, is about, quote, street smart thief Nathan Drake is recruited by seasoned treasure... I'm really having a tough time reading. Is recruited by seasoned treasure hunter Victor Sully Sullivan to recover a fortune lost by Ferdinand Magellan 500 years ago. What starts as a heist job for the duo becomes a globe-trotting, white-knuckle race to reach the prize before the ruthless Moncada, who believes he and his family are the rightful heirs. If Nate and Sully can decipher the clues and solve one of the world's oldest mysteries, they stand to find $5 billion in treasure, and perhaps even Nate's long-lost brother. But only if they can learn to work together, end quote. The film had a trailer release earlier this year to lukewarm internet reception due to its apparent departure in tone from the source material, but the quality of the film remains to be seen. Uncharted is directed by Ruben Fleischer, known for directing both 2009 and 2019's Zombieland movies, as well as 30 Minutes or Less, Gangster Squad, and 2018's Venom. The film is written by Art Markham, Matt Holloway, and Rafe Judkins. Markham and Holloway are known for writing 2008's Iron Man, 2017's Transformers: The Last Night, and 2019's Men in Black International, while Judkins has few writing credits to his name. The film stars Tom Holland, Mark Wahlberg, Sophia Ali, Tati Gabriel, and Antonio Banderas, and is set to release in theaters on February 18th, 2022. So this one I haven't seen. A lot of the trailers, just like the movies, if I know that I'm going to watch something on the air and want to talk about it, then I watch it as close to recording as possible. So all the things are just fresh in my head. So I have not seen this trailer before, so I'm going to pause this and come right back, and I'll give you my thoughts. Yeah, so I think they're showing way too much from this trailer. It seemed like we just saw so much from the third act of the movie. It's just... leave some stuff to the imagination is the first thing that I wanted to say. The other thing was that I think there's too much overlap between this trailer and the previous trailer, and it makes me feel like the movie's going to be really short, or there's just not that much interesting stuff to show. So that's kind of a contradiction of two things, because I think that they show too much, and I also don't think they showed enough, right? They're showing too much of the cool stuff. We saw Nathan Drake fall out of the plane, right? And that was in the third game, so it's a cool thing. They want to advertise it. I get it. It's a big set piece. I don't think we needed to see anything about the pirate ship. I think all of that could have been left to the imagination. We could have seen it in theaters. all that stuff at the end of the trailer. I think it was too much. You showed too much. But, it looked cool. I think that there's something weird going on with the music here. Because why haven't they used in any of the trailers? Why haven't they used the iconic Uncharted theme song? I played all these games. The music is a big part of all the games, and the theme song is really iconic. It's like a PlayStation set piece to hear that song, and I don't know why hasn't been in any of the trailers. That is something you put in the trailer to get people excited, because there's so little about these trailers that feel like the games. So little, but that music can really be the link between the players and what the would-be viewers of the film. But yeah, other than that, not much to say. Again, too much overlap. The last little joke at the end of the trailer involved Sully, and he had a little mustache on his face, and he was like, "Hey, puberty's coming right around the corner for you." That was funny. That's right out of Uncharted. That's great. So I hope that there's enough moments like that in the film that can carry it. But from the trailer, it just doesn't seem like there are. But we'll see. We'll see. I don't want to say that I'm looking forward to it but I kind of am. There's enough over the course of these two trailers to make me slightly optimistic about this movie. And I really wasn't optimistic about it last time, but there was enough in this trailer I just think they're showing way too much. So we'll see, is all I can say. I'm not necessarily excited, but I am optimistic now after this trailer. I think it could be something. Both Tom Holland and what's his name, Mark Wahlberg, are great actors in their own right. So we'll just see. We'll see. I'm excited, but not optimistic. Okay, number 2. This is a tough thing optimistic, but not excited. Okay, now let's move on. Number 2. This is a tough thing to talk about. I'll read the story. Number 2. Announced this week by Discovery Inc., the company behind Discovery Channel, Science Channel, Animal Planet, TLC, Food Network, Asian Food Network, HGTV, and the Travel Channel, and Warner Media. So that was a little confusing. Discovery Inc. and Warner Media have been cleared for a merger by the European Commission. The proposed new company, called Warner Brothers Discovery, will be a new publicly traded company, not under the umbrella of megacorporation AT&T as Warner Media is currently. This merger is expected to take place in mid-2022 after the approval of the merger from Disney's shareholders, the U.S. Federal Trade Commission, and the U.S. Antitrust Division. Although since the European Commission's already made their approval, the U.S. departments will most likely approve the merger as well. The transaction is an all-stock transaction where AT&T would receive $43 billion in a combination of cash, debt securities, and retention of Warner Media's current debt. Following the merger, AT&T shareholders would own 71% of the shares of Warner Brothers Discovery, and Discovery shareholders would own 29%. It is currently unknown if the shareholders plan on selling those large amounts of shares or holding them, thus ensuring the company is never actually traded itself on the market. What does this mean for content? Well, the most likely option is the consolidation of HBO Max and the not-so-popular Discovery Plus streaming services. After that, who knows what the new company is planning, but further consolidation of an already difficult industry in which to start a business is never a good sign in the long run. We'll continue to update as this story progresses. So, long story short, Discovery Inc. and Warner Media are merging, and they're planning to merge in mid-2022. So, what does all this kind of technical jargon mean, all this business jargon? Well, I do have a business major, so let's use it for a sec. Is that this is an all-stock transaction, so that one company is purchasing outright all of the shares of another company to own it. But it's called a merger instead of an acquisition because they're keeping a lot of the assets. Right, the companies are merging. One isn't entirely gobbling up the other, although. And so let's get into one of the numbers here. It's $43 billion in a combination of cash, debt securities, and retention of Warner Media's current debt. So AT&T is the parent company of Warner Media, and Discovery Channel or Discovery Inc., I should say, is its own, is its own company. And so what's happening here is Warner Media, which is a subsidiary of AT&T, is branching off from AT&T, merging with Discovery, which is its own publicly traded company, and forming a new publicly traded company called, Warner Media Discovery Warner Media, something like that. Yeah. I don't know. It's in this document somewhere. This is a big article. Warner Brothers Discovery. That's what the new company is going to be called. And they're doing it for AT&T would receive $43 billion, but that's not all cash. A lot of that, I assume, is debt or assets. An asset can be anything like office space, employees, all the hardware the company owns. This is Discovery, right? So a lot of the stuff that they own is, probably equipment to go out and film things, or they probably own land and film a lot of things on the same lot or something like that. So that's a lot of assets. There's some cash in there, $43 billion. And it doesn't, I couldn't find a breakdown of what amount would be cash. I'm sure that we will see it because these are publicly traded companies. They have to report their earnings. So I'm sure we'll see what that deal would look like in the future. But right now we don't have an inclination. At least I couldn't find one. So cash, debt securities, and retention of Warner Media's current debt. So this new company is taking on all the debt of the two prior companies, which is probably where a lot of this $43 billion deal is coming from. And this is a huge deal, $43 billion. And I did not see, I know this happened during a slow news week, but I did not see the Hollywood Reporter report on this at all. I got this from Deadline and did some other reporting, some other researching, but that, this is huge, right? This is huge. This is Disney buying Lucasfilm. This is huge. $43 billion deal. Right. And not all of that is cash. They didn't purchase this outright. The companies are merging. So AT&T is going to hold 71% of shares of Warner Brothers Discovery. So, and Discovery shareholders are going to own the other 29%. So if you were a previous shareholder of Discovery Inc., then you now own 1/29th of a share of Warner Brothers Discovery. And if you owned one share of Warner Media, it says AT&T shareholders. Maybe. Okay. So if you're a shareholder of AT&T, then not 1/71st, 71%. Sorry, not 1/29th. 29% of a share. So 71% of your share value is in Warner Brothers Discovery. So what it seems like is unless the higher ups at these companies, the two shareholder groups decide to trade Warner Brothers Discovery on its own, is Warner Media? Let's see if it's public. No, I don't think it is publicly traded. No, but AT&T definitely is. That's one of the biggest conglomerates in the world. That's probably the biggest American company in the world. Yeah. No, they're not publicly traded. Well, they are because they're owned by AT&T, but Warner Media itself is not a publicly traded company. So okay, business jargon aside, because it's clear that I've lost a lot of knowledge since graduating, is that this is not good, right? This is an industry. Film and television is an industry that is incredibly difficult to get into on a personal, person-by-person level. How often do you hear about new people, right? How often, Timothée Chalamet is an up-and-coming actor. I mean, I think he's made it by now. He's proven himself. He, starred in Dune, but, 2 years ago, he was an up-and-coming actor, right? And now he's everywhere. How often do you hear about these new people coming into the industry? Not very often, right? But think about how many people you know in your own life that you went to high school with, right? Or college that were like, oh, I'm an actor. I'm on stage, right? I'm a musician or something, right? And how many famous people do you think you know the names of, right? Maybe 200 or so, maybe more famous people. I think maybe there were 300 people in my grade total, right? So it's the point that I'm trying to make is that it's already an incredibly difficult industry to get into, statistically. And when you have deals like this that involve asinine amounts of money, this is incredibly $43 billion, right? Think about $1 million, right, in your own life, about money that you have, right? Now think about $100 million. $100 million is 1/10 of a billion, right? And then you have 43 billion. Think about how huge that number is. I know that not all of it is cash, but I'm sure there's a large portion that's cash. And a lot of these higher up execs at Warner Media and Discovery are getting their checks, right? And they're bouncing. They're probably not going to stick around. They don't want to deal with this Warner Brothers Discovery fallout, Whatever. So when you have consolidation like this involving this high amount of money, it's even more difficult to break into the industry and start your own thing, right? The newest, I hear about, some production studios start up, every now and then, this actor starts this production studio. I think recently I read in the wrap up that Dennis Quaid started his own production studio, but you don't really hear about it. You don't really hear about these things succeeding all that often, or it's like, a production. What am I trying to say here? A24, I think, is the biggest new production studio / distributor. They're more of a distributor than a production studio, but they do both. And they're probably 10 years old, maybe. Probably older than that, to be honest. A24. And they're doing an incredibly risky thing, which is giving indie movies a big marketing budget and a big marketing push and big distribution, which is an incredibly risky thing. And that is a company that took years and years to find its footing and break into this industry that is incredibly difficult to get into. I just don't see how this is good for anyone other than the people that are, walking away with their checks. Consolidation is not what we need in this industry. You hear, sometimes I'll bring up, the big five, right? Big five production studios in Hollywood. Do you really only want 5 production studios in Hollywood, right? Do you really want that? It just leads to monotony in film about, if you're getting sick and tired of seeing the same type of Marvel movie or sequel or, remake year after year after year, then you want the opposite of this, right? No one wants this. It's just stressful. to think that this is where the industry could potentially be going. And Discovery just launched their own streaming service, Discovery Plus, and now we kind of know, if we didn't know already, now we kind of knew that it wasn't successful, because here we are, right, with a merger to probably try and keep Discovery and its assets off the ground, because it was struggling. No one wants a streaming service that's all reality TV. That's boring. I mean, maybe some people want it. I'm sure they have a viewer base, but no, I don't know. There's really not much I can say to make to make myself or probably any listener feel better about this. This isn't good news. I don't know. I know a lot of people are HBO Max subscribers and watch a lot of HBO shows. They put out good content. I was employed by HBO. I got checks from HBO for a bit. This just isn't what I want. This just isn't. It just leads to monotony. I guess I'll just update. I'll just leave it at this, that I'll update as the story progresses. But there's not much updating that can be done. So, yeah. Number 3. Warner Brothers released a new trailer this week for The Batman via their official YouTube channel. However, the trailer was initially unlisted and could only be reached via a link that was going around on Twitter, but is now publicly visible on YouTube. The trailer, subtitled The Bat and the Cat, aims to give a more in-depth look at the film's plot and characters. This new trailer doesn't contain a new written film description, but IMDb has, quote, "In his second year of fighting crime, Batman uncovers corruption in Gotham City that connects him to his own family while facing a serial killer known as the Riddler," end quote. The Batman is written and directed by Matt Reeves, most notable for directing 2008's Cloverfield, 2014's Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and 2017's War for the Planet of the Apes. Joining Reeves as a co-writer is Peter Craig, known for writing 2010's The Town, both parts of the Hunger Games Mockingjay, Bad Boys for Life. Sandra Bullock directed The Unforgivable and unreleased Top Gun Maverick. The Batman stars Robert Pattinson as Bruce Wayne and Batman, Zoe Kravitz as Selena Kyle and Catwoman, Paul Dano as Edward Nashton and the Riddler, Jeffrey Wright as James Gordon, John Turturro as Carmine Falcone, Peter Skarsgård as Gotham DA Gil Colson, Jane Lawson as mayoral candidate Bella Real, Andy Serkis as Alfred, and Colin Farrell as Oswald Cobblepot. The Batman is set to release in theaters on March 4th, 2022. So, yeah, that was an interesting story. I actually didn't even know that this trailer was released at the time of writing this, which was yesterday. I saw it was an unlisted video on YouTube, and the link was going around, and it was just like the Bat and the Cat trailer. And I was like, what is this? Clicked on the link. It was an unlisted link for the trailer. And I go back to that same link now, and it's the same video, but it's just listed on YouTube. So that was interesting. And I was going back to it every, hour or so for a while, and it was just still unlisted. But obviously it's not now, because you probably have heard about it now. The Batman is huge. So I haven't seen it, but I'm going to do what I always do, pause and give you my thoughts. So after seeing that trailer, I kind of have the same opinion that I had after watching the first trailer, which was, I think we're not that far enough removed from Nolan's Batman trilogy. And I think there's been enough incantations of Batman that I don't think it's warranted that we need to, try and make something else, especially because the incantations of Batman that we have are so good already. I don't think that this is necessarily warranted in its creation at all. But the thing that I saw from this trailer that I liked was that maybe what we can get out of this movie is just absurdly brutal, brutally realistically violent Batman movie. And maybe that's what we could get out of this that we haven't gotten before. But other than that, everything that I'm seeing here is stuff that we've seen before. The tone, the characters. We haven't had a good incantation of the Riddler, so maybe that could be cool in live action movies at least. So Jim Carrey. So that's the only thing. Other than that, no, not really looking forward to this movie. Don't really care. We have good Batman movies already. We have them. They're good. They hold up. They're relevant. Christopher Nolan cut his teeth on those movies, so. Cut his teeth as one of the greatest directors of today. So yeah, no, not really looking forward to this, but interesting trailer. Looks cool. Catwoman as a realistic person could be interesting. So, yeah, because in Batman Returns, she was like abducted by cats and she literally had 9 lives. It was odd, but yeah. Okay. Anyway, that's all the news. Here's the wrap up. Just a couple quick things. Multiple news sources are reporting that Michael Keaton is set to play Batman in HBO Max's Batgirl, but Warner Brothers has declined to comment. I question where this news has originated, but it is probably true. Jean-Marc Vallée, director most notable for Dallas Buyers Club, has passed away suddenly. He was 58. Sources are saying it's a heart attack. Lionsgate has delayed John Wick Chapter 4 to March 24th, 2023. Deadline reports that Charlie Hunnam and Mel Gibson action comedy Last Looks gets a tentative February release date for VOD day and date with theaters. And that is all the news. Now, what's coming to the theaters this week? Only one film, Cyrano, which, as we saw earlier, is on that guy from The Hollywood Reporter, Scott Feinberg's shortlist of movies to be considered for Best Picture Oscar nominee. So it is about too self-conscious Too self-conscious to woo Roxanne himself, wordsmith Cyrano de Bergerac helps young Christian nab her heart through love letters. Directed by Joe Wright, starring Peter Dinklage, Halle Bennett, Kelvin Harrison Jr., and Ben Mendelsohn. So that is everything I have for you this week. Again, this is What Gets Captured on Film. My name is Dylan Paulson. If you agreed with me, disagreed with me, like the show, don't like the show, please write in to whatgetscapturedonfilm@gmail.com. This show posts every Wednesday at noon on all your podcast services, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and YouTube at noon. And that's all I have for you. Please stay safe out there. Happy New Year. And I'll have another show coming at you next week. So stay safe. Goodbye.